Hey guys, what's up? It's Stacking Chairs, a youth ministry podcast all about serving in youth ministry, whether it be youth group or youth camp, whatever God has you serving in, that's what we're talking about. I'm one of your hosts, Josh Balhamus. I'm joined by my fellow host and good friend,
Kyle Gray. Josh, it is so good to be here with you today.
It's so good to be.
I'm very excited for this episode.
Me too.
Now, I'll be honest with you, this episode I can struggle with a little bit.
Yeah, I'm actually, I said I was excited. I'm actually not excited because there's a lot of episodes where I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm not a hypocrite. But this one, I feel like a hypocrite.
You are a hypocrite.
I am a hypocrite. And this one really... you know the passage that Paul talks, I don't remember, I can't quote which one it is, but Paul says, I do the things that I don't want to do.
Romans 7, yeah.
Thank you, Romans 7.
Yeah.
So
you're welcome.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's how I feel about this topic today because...
Well, you know, it's. I think we make a lot of excuses for it. Mm-hmm. I think we do whatever we want to do, mm-hmm. and then we backtrack. Mm-hmm. So today we're talking about your words.
Yeah.
Today we're talking about the power of them, the weight of them. Mm-hmm. It makes me think of an illustration where a son was like saying wrong things.
Yeah.
Whether he was lying or he was gossiping or he was saying hurtful things. His dad, said, "Hey, here's your punishment. You're going to go to the fence and you're going to pound in a nail for the last let's say 50 things that he had said. Okay. I'm going to pound in 50 nails into this fence."
Yeah.
He said, "Okay." And so he went and he did it and he was grumbling and complaining. And he got to the end. He said, "All right, I did it." He goes, "Okay, now I want you to go take him out." And he was like, "Dad, I said, I was sorry." He said, "No, I want you to go take him out." He's like, "Okay, whatever." And he went and he took him out. He said, "I took him out." He goes, "Did you notice?" He said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Son, you can always go back and you can apologize. You can take the nails out, but the holes are still left in the wood." Mm. I think sometimes we can all be like that. I know I can be like that. Yeah. I was just joking. I was just kidding around. And
or it's not really that bad of a word. I don't understand. Like, I think on both sides, I think of the words, and we're going to kind of talk on this, but the words we use and also what we use the words for, I guess is a good way to kind of push that out. So, I guess let's just start off with just nice, broad, and simple. We're kind of jumping right into it today because we don't have a ton of time, and
we don't want to waste our words.
Waste our words.
Hey,
but what ways do we need to just watch what we say? Like, what are the areas? So for me, at least, it's the words I use,
right?
But also the way I use my words, and so both those areas. I was just telling you before the show started. My daughter will be 2 this month.
Okay,
and so. We're on our way to church, ironically enough. We have Joy FM playing and everything.
Joy FM.
Yep. And,
by the way, guys, if you want to be on the podcast, we're sorry we couldn't get to you last time. We'll get to you this time. Yeah.
They were asking, but No, so I had to hit the brakes like pretty hard because someone cut us off, and I go, "Dang it!" Mm-hmm. And fortunately, that's not the worst word I've ever used. In front of my daughter, I don't use those words. But the point is...
But you used it that time in front of...
Not that time. This time I just said, "Dang it."
Oh, wow.
And my daughter goes, "Dang it." And I was like... And my wife's been telling me for a while, like, hey, like, when you're driving, you'll say, like, "Oh, this guy's the worst," or "That guy sucks," or whatever. And it's like, they're not, like, the worst words, quote unquote, but they're not kind words. Right. And they're not words that I would want my 2-year-old to speak. Right. And so all of a sudden I got this mirror this past week.
Yeah.
And it said, "Hey, the words that you said, oh, these aren't that bad." Now all of a sudden you have to answer for your 2-year-old is saying them and you're hearing them back.
Oh, absolutely.
And they sound so much worse. And I'm realizing I need to fix my language. And they're not even bad words, quote unquote.
It's so hard. Listen, I got a 16-year-old, 14-year-old, a 10-year-old, and an 8-year-old. But my 16 and 14-year-old will have no problem saying, "Well, Dad, you do that." Well, Dad, you said that.
I know.
Well, that's the way you know.
I'm not looking forward to it.
And it reminds me of this phrase said so many times we're not really sure who originally said it. Watch your thoughts for they become your words. Watch your words for they become your actions. Watch your actions for they become your habits. Watch your habits for they become your character. Watch your character for it will become your destiny. And I just think that whole entire time, I was listening to a comedian one time and he talks about, you have that batter's box in your mind.
Yeah.
You're like the on deck, like, okay, here's what I'm thinking about saying. And he goes, "I don't have a batter's box. It's just batter up." It's just like whatever comes to my mind goes out my mouth.
Yeah.
I can be like that sometimes.
Yeah, me too.
And in times of frustration,
Absolutely.
In times of fear.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times did you go and you scare somebody and they say something and they're like, oh, that wasn't me. Or in anger, they lash out and then they go, oh, I don't know. That wasn't me. But here's the problem. What's Scripture say?
From the abundance.
From the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. I remember there was an old, it wasn't Salty the Singing Songbook. It wasn't Colby the Computer. All right. I need my old school, like church going people. There was, and do not Google it. I want the person that remembers it. But there was a song and it went input, output.
What
goes in is what comes out. Input, output.
I do remember that
That
song.
is what it's all about. Input, output. Your mind is a computer whose input, output. Daily you must choose
something. Or you uncompressed a file that I had tucked away.
I unzipped it.
Yeah, you unzipped the file.
Although that sounds really awkward, so we're not going to say that. Yeah, but like how you just look down your time.
Check the time code. Caught.
So now your thing is like,
do we leave this in? So it's actually really funny. I'm going to leave this whole segment in now. Yeah.
No, but like honestly, what I allow in. Okay, so sidestep. And then let me bring the horses back, like we used to say in Texas. Okay. Did you know that sleep scientists will tell you, you never dream of a person's face that you haven't seen?
Yeah, I've heard that.
Now, I can't tell you how true that is, but they say your brain, when it's in this sleep mode, actually does not go into the creative areas to create people's faces. Yeah. You only see people. Well, here's the deal. I think it's the same way with my mouth. I can't say a word that I haven't allowed to go into my mind or into my heart. Yeah.
It's like when you're speaking, so when you learn Spanish, they say, or any language, they say, think in that language and you'll be able to speak it better.
Claro que sí.
Claro que sí. So when I am trying to speak in Spanish, what I try and do is think in Spanish. But the thing is, it's the same is true for our words. If we're thinking constantly of words, like it doesn't matter. I didn't say that word out loud. But I mean, even Jesus says, he goes one step further in the Gospels when the Pharisees come and approach him. He says, if you hate your brother
in your mind,
then you've committed murder. And so there's also the truth of like, hey, I'm thinking these things, I'm thinking these awful things, and they become like what my internal thinks and my heart starts to think. And then they come out and I say those things. And it's not like, oh, I didn't mean it, because I did mean it. Like I meant that word or I meant that thing that I said, even if it's a joke or even if it's not that bad of a word or whatever my excuse is. Right. Like for one, it hurts God. And that's the thing that like you have to struggle with. But then here's the other thing. You are also setting a precedent for the students that you're serving. Oh yeah. And your kids that are listening. Oh yeah. And even your peers who are around you.
Listen, I have people that I know that that profess to know Jesus as their Savior. I think they do know Jesus as their Savior. But they're like, what's the big deal with swearing? It's just a word. Yep. It's not, and it's the best way for me to express how I'm feeling. Yeah. Yeah. And I remember one time listening to my kids, and my kids said a word that, well, actually they didn't, and it's just really kind of like crazy awkward story that I have with yeah, we won't get into it. Sure. But I thought my kids said a word. Yeah. And so I went back and I was like, all right, let's talk about it. And so I brought it up. And the thing I'm trying to teach my kids is words only have the power that you give them. Mm-hmm. And so in this moment, when this person is saying these words to me, I can look at them and go, I'm not going to give you the power of that moment. But second of all, I'm not going to give the power of those words. I'm going to find a better word, because words also display the character of who you are. And I think sometimes what we say in our carelessness really reveals what our true character is.
No, you're absolutely right. I kept thinking in my head, you have no power here, Gandalf the Grey. Like, but that's an entire sidestep from what I actually want to say, which is you're absolutely right. And even this morning, you're welcome. In our quiet time this morning, 1 Corinthians 13, it was talking about like, what's okay for one person might not be okay for another person, and living in a way that doesn't like pull people away from Christ. And it's talking about meat, but it also says about the words we use somewhere in the passage there. And I'm trying to remember, I should probably look it up, but But no, like, let's say that the words that we're using, like, we're like, hey, you know what? It's accepted by this person, this person, this person. It's not a bad word anymore. We can use it. And I am extremely guilty of this, where I'm like, hey, you know what? I've made an acceptance for this word or this thought process or this way of speech, and therefore I'm okay. But the challenge, and this is where I said at the beginning, you guys are going to hear, I'm a hypocrite. And I'm still going to say it anyway, because it's something I'm trying to teach myself through scripture, is I need to move away from those things. Yeah. And I can't just use it as an excuse to just continue on and talk that way or think that way.
Yeah. Well, and then take it to the next level. If we're going to be in leadership, your words are so valuable to the people that are even not only just underneath you, but underneath your care as a, like there's some other departments. I've had to go back to some other departments, this, and say, hey guys, I'm so sorry for the way that I spoke, for the way that I blew up, for the way that I reacted, because that wasn't kind. Yeah. That wasn't fair. Yeah. I think of George Tice. He used to say, is it KNT? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Is it true? Well, it's necessary because I need to say this. Yeah. Is it true? Yes, it's true, but it's not kind. Well, then you shouldn't say it.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. We skip out. I was talking about this with somebody the other day. We always skip out on the kind part, because we'll say, "Oh, I'm telling the truth." Well, are you telling the truth in love? Right. And the answer is probably no. Like, I'm like, okay, I'm telling this person, and I'm gonna tell them exactly how I feel about this thing, and it's true, so it's okay to say this thing. Right. But there was a non-Christian video that I saw, like, it wasn't like a Christian perspective. It was just a guy saying, he's like, if you are going to speak that way, you hurt your reputation, because like no one's going to want to listen to your truth. So you have to always, like, you can tell the truth and leave out the parts that are hurtful until that person's ready to hear it. He said he went to a friend's play and he sat down at the play and he said it was awful. Worst play he ever sat through in his life. And they come up afterwards and they said, hey, what'd you think of the play? And he goes, it was so great to see you do the thing that you love to do. I loved seeing you up there and how much fun you had, and just the way that you put in so much effort. Wow. And he left out the parts of, hey, this was absolutely
your play
awful.
Was horrible.
But here's what he did, which I thought was interesting, is he called them the next day and said, hey, I told you yesterday how much I love being there, and it's true. Can I give you some insight on what I think you can do better for next time? And ask for permission to, like, share more truth.
And I bet the guy was more open to listen to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that kind of approach in our words, I think, because we're kind of just talking about words in general, like, I think we can lose the excuse of, oh, I'm telling the truth. Yeah. And instead, take a step back.
Well, and I think that goes into another, and one of the things you wrote down, speech isn't limited just to the words that we use. It's also to the values that we portray. Can I tweak your statement?
Please.
Speech isn't limited to the words that we say, but the values we portray.
Oh, and it rhymes too. Let's go.
So, okay. You and I have been around the church long enough. You and I have been around youth ministry long enough that we have watched guys act like total jerks off the stage and then get up and try to be this other thing on stage.
Nothing drives me more crazy, because at least the thing I always think in my head, and this is terrible, but I always think, hey, at least I admit that I'm a hypocrite. And the worst thing in the world I hate is seeing somebody who's a hypocrite who isn't self-aware that they're a hypocrite. Right. Like, that drives me crazy for some reason. Right. Well, I don't think it's for some reason. I think it drives everyone crazy. If someone finds a hypocrite, they're frustrated by it.
Yeah. I've been in situations where my wife and I fought before I got up to preach. And I remember the whole time just being like, oh my goodness, she's just sitting here listening going, what a jerk.
Oh, you mean the time that my wife and I fought right before I led small group this past Sunday? Oh, you mean that time? No, I'm guilty of it too. Yeah, but
your wife wasn't in your small group.
Yes, she is.
Oh, she is? Oh,
yeah,
I thought you meant like
together. Yeah.
Oh, excuse me, Josh.
Not youth group. No.
Forgive me.
Yeah, no.
Well, but sometimes in that moment, I'll have a little moment with my wife from on stage where, like, I'll say something. Yeah. And I'll be like, hey, you know what? There are times that we have to be honest. I'm really sorry. Yeah. Scripture. I think there's nothing more powerful than scripture. Absolutely. Proverbs 21:23 says, whoever keeps his mouth and his tongue keeps himself out of trouble.
There's a lot of Proverbs that talk about just the controlling of the tongue.
Proverbs 17:18, even a fool who keeps silent is considered wise. When he closes his lips, he is deemed intelligent. Proverbs 11:9, evil words destroy one's friends. Wise discernment rescues the godly. Proverbs 15:4, gentle words bring life and health. A deceitful tongue crushes the spirit. Proverbs 16:24, kind words are like honey, sweet to the soul and healthy for the body. And then this Proverbs 1 gets me. Proverbs 18:21. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. Here's the crazy thing with that. It doesn't say only the life is fruit or only the death is fruit.
Yeah.
And it just says whatever fruit you eat, you love.
Yeah.
Because I think the way that I talk, it gets easier and easier and easier for me to continue to talk in that way. And then I'm just like, well, this is just me.
Well, I also just think of it as like the fruit is the consequence.
Oh,
so
absolutely. Yeah.
If you talk in life and you talk in death, you will get the fruit of however you talk.
Oof.
And so if you allow the fruit to grow that is death, and the way you speak around people is death, you will reap death.
Yeah.
And the opposite is true with life and the light that we can have instead. Man, that's strong.
So my parents, we used to watch these little and listen to these little like cool things. Nathaniel the Grublet. Did you ever listen to Nathaniel the Grublet?
No. What is that?
I need somebody out there to show me some love for Nathaniel the Grublet. Ansylvania?
Nope.
No?
I've heard of
Salty the Singing Songbuck?
Yes, I know that one.
Okay. Well, Ansylvania, they say you win or lose by the way you choose. And I think sometimes if I was to evaluate my winning or my losses based on the words that I spoke, I don't think my average would be as good as I wish it would be.
Yeah, no, and same is true for me. I guess so. It kind of takes me to the question of the last question which we had here, which it doesn't need to be the last question, but the last one I wrote, which is
basically you just did the preacher thing. Hey, in closing, we're still going to go for another 25.
Honestly.
Hey, preachers, there is value in your words. When you say in closing, I expect it to be 7 to 10 more minutes and then you're done. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. No, I was listening to a podcast the other day of John Mark Comer, and he said, all right, in closing. And I looked down at the podcast and I was like, there's 35 minutes left. I was like, that's not true at all.
Yeah.
No. So we talked about like all these words and how we're using them. So I guess the big question is, and it's kind of like, it seems like obvious that there's like an answer of just like, well, no, there's not an exception. But the question is like, are there exceptions to our words and to the words we use and to the way we speak? Are there exceptions to like for it being okay? Like, let's say you're in a really bad situation and the follow-up question is, okay, if there's not an excuse or there's not an exception, then why do we live as if there is? Because we just read that life and death, like,
are in the power of the mouth. Yeah.
Yeah. And we like reap those fruits. And like, in the New Testament, it talks about, Paul writes that, the rudder of a ship and the bit for a horse, like those things control these powerful like things and creatures. So I guess the first question is, are there exceptions? Are there times that we're okay to speak harshly?
I think we say there are exceptions.
Yeah.
I don't think there should be exceptions.
We live as if there are.
Yeah. Well, no, absolutely.
I do.
But here's my question. Jesus got frustrated.
Yeah. And
I don't think us getting frustrated is sin.
No.
But Jesus got frustrated with the religious pretenders. I think he got frustrated sometimes with situations that were happening around him. I think he got frustrated with the fig tree.
Yeah.
When it wasn't doing what it was supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And so, but in that moment, did Jesus carelessly say whatever words he wanted to say? No, I think he spoke what was supposed to be spoken.
Well, and he also has the authority. I think sometimes my pastor used to say this growing up. He'd say, like, you're not Jesus. And so sometimes it's like, can be taken to an extreme. You're like,
hey, Josh, you're not Jesus.
Yeah, thank you. But like the things that Jesus did, like he had the authority to do in a way that sometimes we don't have to do. Right. And I think it's important to like gauge those things.
Well, but so good, to go back to James. James says a couple different things. Number one, James says salt water and fresh water should not come from the same spout. And he's talking about our mouths. Yeah. Hey, listen, good truth and bad words, should not come out of your mouth. Paul, what does he say? He says, let no corrupt talk or unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only that which is necessary for the moment, that it may build up the hearers that you speak it to. Yeah. James also says, in the same way, the tongue is a small thing, but it makes grand speeches. For a tiny spark can set a forest ablaze. But the most hurtful one for me is James 1:26. If you claim to be religious but don't control your tongue, you are fooling yourself. Your religion is worthless. Now, in the context of that, a lot of people are like, oh, that means he's talking about like bad words. I don't think that's what he's saying. Because before that, he's saying be doers of the word, not merely hearers only. He talks about the guy that looks into the law, the perfect law, like a mirror, and does something with it, not becoming a forgetful hearer, but an effectual doer. This man will be blessed in what he does. And then he says, and if you talk a big game as if you're religious, but you're really not, your tongue does not match up. Yeah. And I think sometimes that's, well, I say hurtful things, but I try to act all religious.
Yeah.
Or I cut other people down, or maybe even I talk a big game, but I don't have follow through in the background.
Yeah.
All that religion, I don't think it's saying your relationship with Jesus is worthless. Think it's saying, hey, your religion, all your religious activity. What's the point of it?
Yeah.
Well, it's empty.
Well, yeah, you lose opportunity to actually share the good news of Christ.
Right. So let's go back to your question. Are there exceptions? I don't think there are exceptions. I think we make exceptions, but I think those exceptions slowly destroy our character.
Yeah.
I think they're like the little Chinese water torture, the droplets.
Yeah.
You know, it's just
it's like water on. Have you ever seen the videos of like water dripping on a rock? There's this place, and there's one that's like been like a year, and you see no difference. You see 10 years, and you see it kind of like divoting a little bit, and then you see like 25 years, and it's like completely carved out just by a drip of water. Right.
So if my words are a drip of water, then what is the word picture when I blow up at somebody?
Yeah.
It's not a drip of water.
No, it's because you've been
it's a tsunami, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely.
So yesterday I had a situation where I was trying to get in contact with a guy because I was frustrated. There was something that happened.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, I don't want to go into this frustrated, but I want you to explain yourself. I want you to help me understand.
I was like, oh no.
Josh, who
do you think you are?
Who do you think you are? But can I tell you one of the greatest things that God did? The guy didn't answer the phone when I called.
That's grace of God right there.
That is the grace of God.
Yeah.
And I took some time and I got into his word and I prayed about it and then hours passed and I'm going to try to call the guy today and talk to the guy today. But guess what? Guess what I'm going to be able to do? Hey, I don't think I understand the situation. Can you help me understand the situation? Is way better than, dude, what in the world are you thinking?
Yeah. Well, and you just did a podcast on your words. And so, you don't want to go straight into being a hypocrite immediately after this episode, do you?
That's right. I don't.
I did apologize. I apologized to a coworker yesterday because I got like frustrated and said like something I didn't mean. It wasn't like super terrible. I don't want you to like all of a sudden HR's like emailing me. What did you say? No, it was this moment where I had to apologize to somebody. And I said, I'm doing an episode on my words tomorrow, and it would be even more hypocritical than I already am to not apologize for like what I said, because like it wasn't fair for me to say what I said. And it wasn't like a big thing. I don't want you to think that I'm like, blowing anybody up over here. But anyway, so the other thing I was thinking of quick is the words we use like create a bad reputation in front of our students, right?
Right.
The way we talk, what we say. So the words we use and then how we say them, right? But what about, so there's a kid in our youth group who he'll make jokes and he'll crack stuff, and I always am like it's not funny. I'm like, okay, hey, that's not nice. What you just said is not kind. Like, and I, again, hypocrite because I do those things too. But the stuff he's saying is really not kind sometimes. And I'm like, hey, you got to, if you say this again, like I have to talk to your parents about it. Like this is very unkind thing to say, right?
Right.
But then every once in a while he'll say something that's actually funny, and it makes me laugh.
Right.
And it's not appropriate. Like, it's not a nice thing to say.
Right.
And I laugh at it, and I'm there, and I'm like the other day after small group, he was in my small group, and he goes, one of the kids comes back from his small group, and he goes, I got Josh to laugh like 3 different times today. And I was like, I was so frustrated because I'm like, these aren't values that I hold.
Right.
But they caught me off guard. And, again, like, because we're humans, we kind of gauge like, okay, it wasn't that bad of a thing to say. And those were like those kind of things.
Right.
But they were still unkind.
Right. So even in this moment, while you're telling this, the natural retort in my brain is to say, well, that's Josh, because that's because you're a horrible person.
Yeah. which is unkind.
Which makes you laugh, but it's unkind.
Yeah, no.
And I would say this, 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10 in this moment, for you to share that story, for me to go, well, Josh, that's because you're a horrible person.
Yeah.
Not that big of a deal. It's going to roll off your back.
Yeah.
But here's what I can't guarantee. I can't guarantee that later on, when you're feeling horrible about yourself, or later on, if we had a bad interaction, that old devil doesn't bring back that joke, you start to wonder, does Kyle really think I'm a horrible person?
Yeah. No,
and
you're right.
You know, hey, is that okay for me to joke about that thing? Hey, Josh jokes, man, Josh laughed at that. I mean, I guess I want to fit in. I want to be funny.
Yeah.
I've got a young man in youth group right now that I had the potential conversation with him. 2 weeks ago, I had we'll call him Josh. Josh, you have so much potential.
Oh, that
you have so much potential. And, you know, he looked at me and he goes, everybody keeps telling me that. And I just looked at him, I said, here's the deal. You not only have potential, you have power. And I said, here's what I need you to understand. You are exerting your power. You're just not exerting it in the way that I wish you would exert it.
Yeah.
I don't even know if that's the right word.
Yeah, sure.
Exude, you're utilizing it.
Yeah.
Okay. And I said, because here's the deal. How you act, everybody's following. Well, this is one kid in the youth group who's an influential boy who's influencing this small pocket of people around him. But I know, because I'm watching it, there's people on the other side of the room watching it and evaluating it. And so now I've got to figure out, okay, I don't want to come down on him in the middle of youth group. Josh, would you just be quiet? Would you close your stinking mouth? Or, you know, I've got leaders like, kick him out. And I'm like, yeah, but who wants to be the guy that's kicking out kids of youth group, you know? But again, this kid's actions, this kid's words are influencing those around him. He's impacting and even influencing me.
Yeah.
You know, and so I know I got to be so careful even in going back and talking to him and saying, hey, listen, you know, let's evaluate this.
Yeah.
Let's talk through this.
Yeah.
Well, now I'm the guy that's up there and I'm speaking, and I think it's very valuable what I say on stage.
Yeah.
But when I step off stage, if I'm joking about stuff I shouldn't be joking about, if I'm saying words that I shouldn't be saying, and I know I'm not perfect. I'm sure there are some of you that are out there that have been around me and have heard me joke around about stuff. Here's what we're saying. We are inviting you in to love us enough to help us be better.
Yeah.
Now, at the same time, when I say that, I know there's some people out there.
There's going to be a time where they come up to you and say, like, hey, you told me I could do this. And you're going to be like, oh man. All right. That's the frustrating part of sanctification, man. Yeah. It's the frustrating part of sanctification is that, we have to be held accountable to each other. And you know what? If you are willing to come and keep Kyle accountable, I didn't give you permission yet. I'm still deciding whether or not
good.
Just kidding. No, please keep me accountable as well. But you also invite that back for yourself. And so I think we offer that to people. We need to be willing to get it back. And like, that's something, and it's on my laundry list of sins and things that like I'm unhappy with where I'm at. And this is one of the ones that really, really, really like jabs me because it is the area that I would, and when I sit down with the students and we say, hey, there's sins that we all struggle with. For me, it's words and the way I speak. I literally say that every time to my guys in small group. Like that's what I struggle with.
Right.
And so this episode, it's episode 51. It took us all the way to episode 51 to do this episode because it's one that I really don't want to talk about. It's frustrating. I hate it. I hate that I'm in that spot, you know?
Yep. There's a young person in a youth group that I was working with. Christian young man, loved the Lord, wasn't really acting like it for a number of years, but would show up at church, you know, claimed to know the Lord. I think he knew the Lord. I think he still knows the Lord. See, even that, I'm like, I just said, he was dating a girl, did not know Jesus, did not like Jesus, did not love Jesus.
Yeah.
3-4 years into the relationship, he finally says, I need to tell you about Jesus. Sits down with her, shares with her the gospel. Her response is, are you kidding me? I'm a better person than you are. I don't say the things that you say. I don't do all the things that you do.
Oh man.
And it reminds me, even in this moment, that our careless words and our careless actions can tear down opportunities to share the gospel.
Yeah.
And so there's people that were like, well, I'm just acting like them. I'm just hanging around them. I'm just being like them because I want to earn the opportunity to say something. You're not earning it. You're throwing it away.
Yeah, you've lost that
There ought to be something different about us.
Yeah.
So now let's go back to the question of exceptions. I think those moments where we would say, well, this is an exception actually shows the love of Christ and the example of Christ more than in the day-to-day.
No, I think you're right.
I remember I was out at a camp one time and I was hammering and I hit my hand with a hammer. And I was like, oh my goodness. Oh, okay. And I had another coworker of mine that I respected. Looked at me and goes, "You're a good man."
You're a good man?
Yeah, you're a good, yeah, Kyle, you're a good man. And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he was like, "Earlier today, I saw you hit your hammer and you didn't swear. And you didn't lose your cool.
Yeah.
You paused for a second. You got frustrated with the moment.
Yeah.
And then you kept, and then you went back to hammering again." And honestly, I didn't think about it. Now I think about that now a lot.
Yeah.
But in that opportunity, I praised Jesus. I displayed Christ's likeness.
Yeah.
But I go, oh man, are there things that I'm gonna, think about later and go, man, I remember one time there was a program guy we would all pick on because of something, and it became like
running bit,
and I can't remember if it was a camper. I think it was a counselor. Came to me a couple weeks later. A couple weeks into the summer, I was like, "Hey, I don't really think it's kind the way that you make fun of so-and-so in this way." And I was like, "Well, we all do." And they're like, "Yeah, but you're the camp director."
Yeah.
And probably everybody else does because you do.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm done.
No, yeah. There's a guy.
Come on.
No, there's a guy who, maybe it's the same person. There's a guy who used to always like get the butt of every joke that I knew who was in a camp position. And I remember like talking to him once, and he's like, "Yeah, I don't like it. Like, I don't like being the butt of every joke." And I don't know, like my wife and I, like we were talking the other day, we were like, man, like I really like wonder whatever like was going on. I wonder what's going on with him now, like what he's doing. And he's serving in a church as a youth pastor now. And I just messaged him the other day and I was like, "Hey man, my wife and I were talking about you. Like, I think I look very highly upon you, and I think you are a great example of Christ's love, and I think you are like a very like humble and like kind person, and I love what you're doing there." And just shot him a message, and he's like, "Hey man, thanks so much." And I was like,
"That's awesome."
But like, I don't know. I just remember like realizing like as we're all doing these jokes and thinking that he's a part of it, and like realizing one day, oh, he's not a part of it. No. Like he goes along with it because he's just a chill guy,
right?
And like, yeah, like that was one of the many moments along the journey where I've realized, hey, you know what? Like, I can be a terrible person. I need to watch my words.
Josh, I think it's important. I think it's valuable. We would encourage you today. Grab a person that spends a lot of time with you and ask them, hey, where are times that you notice I get a little careless with my words?
Yeah.
Maybe it's your wife. Maybe it's your kids.
Don't start with your wife. You don't need that. You don't need that much honesty.
Maybe it's your coworkers. But do it, guys. Yeah. How are we having opportunities to proclaim the name of Jesus by the words that we're saying? If somebody evaluated a relationship with Jesus based on the words that came out of your mouth, in your excuse moments, right?
Yeah.
Or in your mess up moments.
Yeah.
But also, here's my thing. If you're man enough to say it, you should be man enough to go back and make it right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this is one of those episodes where I don't think I've ever felt like as like squeamish as I do now at the end of an episode where I feel like convicted of like, hey, I need to do this. And Kyle needs to go. He just showed me his phone. So
I did. Guys, this has been Stacking Chairs.
We're out of time.
Youth Ministry Podcast about all things youth ministry. And what is more youth ministry than stacking chairs and watching your words, right?
Absolutely. Guys, please be careful, but also, know the intention of your heart, know why, and spend time in the Word. Make sure that you're on the right track of why you're doing the things you're doing. Again, check us out on Stacking Chairs Pod everywhere. Email stackingchairspod@wo.org. And again, don't forget, the new community is coming up soon. We are working on it even as we speak.
Ooh.
Yeah. And remember,
so even
Kyle,
digitally, you can stack those chairs.